Joel and True, everyone, and welcome to Five Nights at Soji's. This is our review of Picard Episode 6, The Impossible Box. We're a little later than normal this week. We were unable to do our normal stream time on Friday, so here you go. Here it is on a Monday. So welcome to the show. I'm here with Subsidian as always, and we're going to be just talking through the episode as normal. So, what'd you think of this one?
Too many plot devices.
You think so? I thought it was, yeah. I mean, I actually thought it was a pretty decent episode. There were some aspects of it that were really, really dumb, but it was a pretty decent episode overall. It felt like the story really moved forward. We got to see Picard finally encountering Soji. The second half of this opening series of the show is going to start moving in a different direction. Finally, Soji's been separated from her stupid relationship with Narek, so I'm saying the word stupid a lot. I just realized, but there's so... I'll try to use a different word. There's certain... Like, I really like this show. I do. I've been enjoying it, but there's certain aspects of it that I'm like, why? What's happening? And this this episode in particular had some of the most ridiculous lines of dialogue I've ever seen. But it also had some really good stuff too. So we're going to get into all of that, going through with screenshots as per usual. So hello, if you're listening live, please talk to us in the live chat. Let us know what you think. Tell us what you liked about the episode, what you didn't like. Share your thoughts as we go through. And, we might as well get started here. So, any other general thoughts before we start going through the screenshots that I've selected for this week?
Well, just the normal disclaimer, that again, this is not the Star Trek show I would have made. This is not the Star Trek show I think you would have made. This isn't the Star Trek show that a lot of us would have made. We can all agree that the Star Wars IP has been handled like just something that's been handled so poorly it's disgusting.
Well, we've literally said that every week though, so I think we'll just leave it at that for this one. But all right,
but again, it's like I really want to hit that home because there's a lot of people who are like, the show's bad, and it's like, yeah, the show's not the best that it certainly is not the best that it could be, but it's the only thing we have at the moment. And I don't think fake or trying to be overly like negative about everything. It's like work with what you can, right?
Yeah.
So we're working with what we can.
And as I've said, it's a different style of Star Trek show, and I don't mind that. Definitely some things I hope they tighten up in the future seasons and potentially in future shows. It would be neat to have, a series of shows, so focusing on different characters from the Star Trek universe and what they're up to later in life. But it would be, I think there's some lessons to be learned from this show. There's some things that could be done better, but overall, definitely, I see this as a win. Like, it's definitely, it's not a terrible show.
Well, I've heard some hilarious, like, counters as to why the show is bad. And I have to address some of it. It's like, that there's the guy who doesn't know that Picard's Picard. I'm like, you mean the new fresh recruit that wasn't around 14 years ago? You mean that guy? Or the guy that potentially is being a dick to Picard because he just saw that interview where Picard said that Starfleet's not Starfleet anymore and it's a disgrace? You mean that dude?
Yeah, I would go with the second one on that.
Yeah, there's reasons why things are the way they are, and somebody was really upset. Somebody who I generally respect. Somebody was really upset about the whole, the pilot doesn't know who 7 of 9 was. It's like, the
The
Borg haven't been a big threat. The pilot, the dude.
Yeah, Captain Rios.
Yeah, Captain
Yeah.
Rios. That, like, the Borg haven't been a threat since, like, mid TNG. So that's like, I mean, how many years ago now? That's a really long time ago. That's a really long time ago. Like sure, he probably might have heard something about it, but unless he's actually studying, this, it's like, well, somebody's like, well, they're supposed to be the best of the best. They're supposed to know everybody. It's like,
There's a lot of
it's
people in the
it's a
galaxy.
galaxy.
Yeah.
Do you understand the concept of a galaxy? And do you understand the concept of thousands of ships from hundreds of systems filled with billions upon billions of people? I'm sure, again, if you studied Borg, right? If that was a particular class instead of just the general, like, cover class, right? Because I mean, if you're going to take a 4-year study in every single class there is, I mean, it wouldn't be Star Trek, or the Star Trek Federation. It would be a federation of geriatrics.
Yeah.
Like, if everybody had to learn everything about every particular study that they possibly could, it's like, again, now I don't like the way that they're portraying Riaz, because he seems like he's a little, like, disjointed for somebody who supposedly was a and supposedly is still a star fleet, paragon. So that bothers me a little bit, but it's like, calm down, people, calm down.
Yeah.
Again,
I
not
mean, it
not
is
the best
pretty,
thing.
like, the galaxy is big enough. It's pretty remarkable that Picard ever ran into Seven of Nine, but I mean, they had a pretty decent explanation for why she's there. But still, it's
No,
like,
no, no. That's one thing that I highly disagree with. That concept is like, well, 709 wouldn't have met Picard. They wouldn't have known each other. They're both ex-Borg.
no, but I mean that in
The
the context of
Federation
the show,
ex-Borg.
that they just
That's,
happen to run into each other is, the odds are still pretty low. But like I said, they do have a pretty reasonable explanation for. I mean, yeah, they would know who each other is. I mean, Seven of Nine
yeah.
was
Well, I mean, she was
Seven
in
of
the
Nine would
area, and she.
absolutely know who Locutus was. I mean,
I think they had this, like. Well, I mean, everybody who's ex-Borg knows who Locutus is. And that was one of the highlights of this episode, was that somebody was like, Locutus, and it was like, oh, haha. But no, I think we covered it. Seven picked up that Picard was in the area when everybody was doing searches about him. And
well,
this is
yeah, yeah.
obviously somebody who she would have had flagged as, like, a person of importance,
Well, of course.
right?
Yeah, I'm just
So,
saying, like, once he was in the general vicinity, it makes sense. But like, the galaxy's a huge place. That's what I'm saying. As Shua82 says, better than no Star Trek. Yes.
yeah.
I mean, I think no Star Trek is better than bad Star Trek, but this show is definitely, like, this isn't. I wouldn't call this
It's okay.
bad Star Trek. It's decent. It's all right Star Trek.
And like I've said before, it needs to be done, because the things that happened during the TNG can't be ignored. You can't ignore the fact that Picard, amongst several other people, were the prime reason why you had the Dominion War to begin with. That this is something that can't be ignored,
Yeah.
and you have to deal with that. You want to retcon it, and like I said, a couple episodes ago, I think somebody was like, in the first episode, he should have gotten back on the Enterprise. They should have, brought the band back together. They should have stopped a Klingon invasion, all before the first act, and then been on some holodeck adventure. It's like, wow, you're just really stuck on, like, TNG era stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
this isn't
Klingons.
Like, this isn't
Klingons, really. Like, you want a Klingon invasion after they fought side by side, something that had been, like, prophesied way back in the original Star Trek, something that had been, like, this, like, that was one of Gene Roddenberry's like, final things that he really wanted to have happen, is he wanted the Klingons and the Federation to eventually learn to work together as strong allies, and not to degenerate into war again. and some Star Trek fan is telling me that, oh no, there should have been a Klingon invasion. It's like, why? Why? What possible reason could you have given it? Like, it makes no sense whatsoever. Like, anyways, yeah. So, anyway, enough of the recap.
And then Mike Phoebe says, has anyone noticed that Rios' ship has a red and white Herc paint job? Don't know what that means, actually, but does that mean anything to you? I did notice the red and white paint job in this episode. It definitely was prominently on display.
The Herc, I think so. I just wonder if that has anything to do with like just style choice, because like coloring, like it might. It might.
Yeah. If this is referencing something that's deep in the lore.
It's a theory that's as good as most other theories at the moment. So yeah, I will not criticize that.
Science Miles says, I retcon it in my head. The movies didn't happen, and only the episodes of Voyager that didn't involve the Borg Queen count. Okay, interesting. The whole Borg Queen concept has always puzzled me, but I haven't reached that part in Voyager yet. I'm still working my way through. Anyway, let's get on to...
It works. It's one thing that I think we can have a wonderful follow-up debate on some of these topics, and the Borg Queen is one of my favorite things to reference, because it absolutely works. Yes, it was a slight retcon, but you're talking about like a micro retcon from first era TNG Borg, which they retconned a couple of things. There is some difference, absolutely, but it's not a difference that I would quantify, really. Like, it's a natural evolution of where they were taking the show. Like, they didn't really know what they were doing back in the first 2 seasons of TNG. They had no clue what they were doing. I mean, come on.
No, especially that first season. That first season was
there's so many God characters in TNG. There's so many God characters. There's the dude on the planet. There's the slime entity or the ooze entity. There's the guy who does experiments on them. Like, there's so many God entities in that season. It's mind-boggling how many there is and why there's so many. And you really kind of had that kind of die off by the time they got into the later seasons, because they were kind of like, for a show that's all about this, it's like,
they had it's like they just didn't have a lot of great ideas for things they could encounter in that first season of the show. But anyway, let's get back to talking about current generation of Star Trek. And Mike Phoebe says they are the bad guys in a Star Trek game. The Herc are mentioned by name only in DS9. They are an ant-like race. Interesting. I'll check that out when I get there. I'm thinking about diving into Deep Space Nine once I'm done with Voyager.
Actually, you know what? A really good thing to jump into is also the MMO. It is old. Yes. However, I think it has more love and care for the actual plot storyline than Enterprise and Discovery put together. All of the best things that you could possibly take from any of those shows are put to shame by just one season of the MMO. Not release season, that was kind of iffy, but what they did after they kind of rebuilt the game. They have characters from the shows come in and reprise roles constantly. They have genealogies of characters from the first Star Trek, and again, it's not a perfect thing, but the amount of love and care that those devs have put into that game, the amount of respect that the fans have for that game is honest to God, again, not perfect, not the way I would have done it. In fact, the original pitch on that idea on that game was very, very different, but it was it's good, and I would highly recommend anybody who's who wants to give it a go, give it a go, give it an honest go. You will be very surprised at how good it ends up being.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, cool. All right, so start breaking down this episode. So this this hallway just immediately reminded me of one of the more recent Five Nights at Freddy's games. It takes place in the house. So yeah, that's why I said welcome to Five Nights at Soji's at the beginning. We get to see young Soji at the beginning of this episode, and they picked someone who looks quite like her. So that's really interesting, especially considering this is obviously a reconstructed memory, or like an implanted memory in her android brain. So yeah, it starts off with this memory / dream sequence where she is walking through the hallways of her house, and she goes into her father's workshop, and she can't see his face. She can't see what she's working on. You know, I felt they really captured well the feeling of being in one of those dreams where you like can't look in certain directions, you can't move in certain ways.
I wouldn't know what that's like.
It's
no clue what that's like.
Yeah. So, yeah, thought it was quite interesting. And then she wakes up in bed with Narek, because now this bugged me. Her relationship with Narek has bugged me from day one. She's like insane. She's either just has no self-respect.
I mean, she is 3 years old. She is 3 years old. I'm just saying, she's 3 years old. Which, by the way, somebody needs to call the FBI on Narek.
Yeah.
But, just like she's on a ship that is full of Romulan spies, and everybody knows that Narek is a Romulan spy. Everybody knows that
she knows from the first moment that something's up with him.
That he's a Romulan spy, and it's for some reason she's all like, "I can change him." So I guess in that sense, it's perfectly normal.
Well, is it that, or is it like I thought it was more of a she's really has kind of just has a thing for
I don't
putting herself in danger. I don't know, like being into these mysterious, dangerous kind of guys, maybe.
You'd think that for somebody who's sending basically like spy robots out into the world to like do something, that they would have included some kind of an algorithm or some kind of a defense mechanism against obvious spies. Like,
yeah,
it's one of the major plot holes thus far.
Well, I mean, I guess you could argue that, I mean, if she is only 3 years old, she doesn't have a ton of maturity in picking partners, but I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe she's just into that kind of self-destructive behavior. Yeah, I have seen. There are certain. I've seen people do much dumber things with regard to relationships. So I guess it kind of works out, but it's still it bugs the crap out of me. Yeah. Because she doesn't trust him. She clearly doesn't trust him. She knows she doesn't know him or even know his real name, and yet they're like sleeping together like they've got some kind of a relationship. And he's like, "I want to know everything about you." And it's like he says stuff like this at every opportunity. That's gotta start bugging the crap out of you at some point.
It's gonna start like raising the alarm bells at some point, like warning, warning, warning. But again, I mean, we both know people who have been in relationships where it's like, hey, how can I ruin my life the absolute fastest possible way?
Yeah. Like here, she says your true name. This reveals an interesting thing. Like she says, so, Romulans have a name for the public, they have a name for family, and then they have their true name, which they only reveal to the one you give your heart to or something, which is an interesting way of describing it. But, I mean, I don't know. Oh, there you go. I mean, I'd never heard that about the Romulans before. I don't know if that's ever been referenced in the lore, but it comes into play later.
It kind of makes sense considering how they have to like the Romulan society as we have it on paper wouldn't survive, because there's just would have far too many people. Like, you would be so mistrusting of everybody that you would be your greatest enemy. I'm writing a species that in my book that is in constant war with itself, and they're probably one of the most powerful species there is, and could easily take over the world if they could just stop fighting each other. They don't even recognize that when a lesser race beats them, they assume that the lesser race has beaten them because it's actually a plan by one of their own race members who is planning something against them, and that this is part of the plan from one of their enemies. They don't conceive the thought that, normal humanoid creatures have the capability of defeating them. It's just beyond their perceptional filter. And that's what the Romulans would be if they didn't have some form of like family value structure that allowed them to like not see paranoid schizophrenia in everything that they did. There's that other race in the TNG, the one episode where they're paranoid about everything to the point where they're like, hey, we want to join the Federation. Oh, but turns out the Federation was planning this to kidnap themselves the whole time. And you're like, these people are crazy. And then like Picard like realizes that they're crazy, and he's like, yeah, you guys are crazy.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So
okay.
yeah,
Here's a major.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Here's a major plot hole for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Doctor. Why is her name slipping my mind now? Dr. Jurati here talking to Picard about how Bruce Maddox died. His, his the medical treatment was working for a little while, but his heart just couldn't take it. Yeah, and nobody activates the EMH.
Nobody looks at the scans. Like, again, okay, maybe she's a computer genius. Maybe she can hack a thing. In which case, again, with Riaz, I'm like, Riaz, you're an idiot.
Yeah, she's...
If Riaz really has, like, if he's running the ship by himself, and he brings on a bunch of people that he can't trust on a super secret mission dealing with super secret spies, the first thing you do is you establish a watcher. A watcher program that watches and makes sure that the catalog all of the things that are going on, so that you can say, hey, this is suspicious activity here.
Yeah, exactly,
so
Phoebe. How did the EMH not rat her out? Like, I figure the EMH, which self-activates when somebody is having like a panic attack,
and you'd think that, again, basic security. If somebody is having a panic attack, or if somebody is prone to panic attacks, or if the EMH has had to activate because the person has been having some kind of like mental breakdown, that person shouldn't have the ability to access critical care systems on any patient, especially themselves, right? Because that's part of the problem. And then they also should not have access to be able to, I mean, if she did delete the EMH's memory, she should not have the ability to do that. Sorry, this subsystem is closed. She should not.
Now, unless she has help from the Federation, because we know she's working with Commodore O.
Yeah,
so maybe she has help from them. We'll have to see how this plays out in future episodes, but maybe they'll discover, the EMH is something weird about it, or some of the memory's been erased, or there's some anomaly in the in the files about Dr. Maddox's condition. Maybe that's still coming. Maybe that will be resolved. If they don't resolve that, that'll be a major plot hole. Mm-hmm. But it could be something that's going to happen down the road when they realize, something's up with Dr. Agnes. Okay, so Elnor was just, in my opinion, Elnor was great in this episode. His attempts to sort of integrate and communicate and just, he had a lot of great lines, and he like inserts himself in the conversation and then realizes he's overstepped. And he's like, I should outbutt, which I just thought was hilarious.
Of my favorite dialogue when you mix things up all the time.
Yeah, it's like, I should outbutt, and then later he says to I have the same picture twice. Later on, he's talking to Dr. Jurati, because she's talking to Picard about the Borg did this to you, the Borg did that to you. She describes the whole assimilation thing. It's kind of clunky, but I think it's there to catch anybody up who isn't necessarily familiar with Star Trek and the Borg and what happened to Picard, or maybe needs a refresher. She goes through the whole description, like, they did this to you, they did that to you, they assimilated you, and basically describes how the Borg works in about 4 to 5 sentences. And then after Picard leaves, he gets upset and he leaves, and then he says, Elnor says to her, like, he doesn't see that you are hiding something that you'd like to forget too. And then she doesn't react well to that, and he's like, was I inbutting? So anyway, Elnor was delightful in this episode. I thought he seemed like kind of a bland character the first time he showed up, but he's been growing on me. And I think that there's a lot of room to explore his character quite a bit. Shua 82, a plot hole you can fly the Enterprise through. Absolutely, that would be. Yes, it was exposition dumping. I see why it was kind of necessary, though, so I can forgive that. Although maybe they could have done it in a less clunky way. All right, so Picard goes to his holodeck program of his chateau and starts looking through files about the Borg and the Reclamation Project and the Romulans, and he finds a bunch of pictures. He finds this picture of young Hugh. Nice callback here. And then we see Hugh later in the episode. And then this was a cool shot. He finds a picture of himself after being assimilated when he was much younger, and the camera like pans until the face on the screen is like lined up with his face. Really cool moment, because he starts touching his face like he's remembering the implant being there. The only thing that bugged me about this is that the image on the screen that we're seeing is reversed, so that thing on his face would actually be on the left side of his face. So why he's touching the right side of his face? It was that.
Oh, don't
kind of threw
give
me
it
off.
too much. Don't give it too much thought there. It's not healthy.
No, but I mean, besides that, I see what they were going for visually, which was really cool. But at the same time, it was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. One question I have, though, I don't know if this ever was explained, but Picard, most Borg, they have that implant. They get, one eye taken out, and they have that ocular implant put in, but that never happened to Picard. He's got his real eyes, correct? So
we don't. That's one of those things that I don't think they covered. I think it's one of those things that they didn't really like cover super deeply, or that because they have such because each starship has every time he takes the transporter, they take this like full like DNA scan of him. I think it's far easier to replace missing limbs and pieces of a captain who's just beamed off, right? Then
I suppose, but then why don't they do that with like I get, because seven of nine had she had to get an wait a minute, no, you're right, because they wouldn't have had her pattern on file.
Yeah. And the Doctor spent many it was kind of like a quick visual thing, right, for in Voyager. However, the official lore is that it took like a good solid year for the Doctor to like tweak and adjust the majority of Seven of Nine's like systems, and that he had time to like finitely craft her. Like, she's got a fake eye. One of her eyes is not biological, it's robotic, and that he had done that for all of the reasons that you need to do that for. But he had much more success, and he had spent much more time like fine tuning it versus like how the Romulans are basically doing it en masse. They're doing the McDonald's version of the steak supper, whereas the Doctor on Voyager did a fine Italian restaurant version of a steak dinner.
No, very true. Yeah, it was more personalized attention there.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that I'm really grateful for that from a lore perspective. It just kind of goes to show. And then the fact that, they kind of did cover how, Ichib had given her his, one of his implants, and he didn't have it anymore. And that's what they were searching for, because he didn't.
Yeah, that was a nice callback in the previous
episode. That was a real solid callback on that. So,
yeah,
just overall, pretty happy with the general direction on this. Again, I know things could be better, but I think they're doing a good enough job with it, considering that, again, this is a very low budget show. I think Picard himself is the largest cost of this entire thing.
The actor, yeah, I can imagine. So yeah, now we move on to the late night telenovela portion of our show. Yeah. Which we call the shirtless emo space captain and the bored lonely doctor encounter one another in the middle of the night on his little spacecraft.
Hello, Doctor. Have you found all of the
take that where you will, but this whole part of it, I was like, what is the point of this? I guess they want to build a relationship between these two for reasons, but this is the most cringy line of dialogue I think I've ever heard in Star Trek or most anywhere. Yeah. I've never slept with the captain of anything before. Okay, good for you. Is that your ambition in life? Sleep with the most powerful people you can? Is that that's your aspiration in life? So yeah, I don't know. I think it was someone on Twitter. I think it was that Star Wars girl highlighted this as well. It was like, when did this is supposed to be Star Trek, not some lame telenovela. So that's where I got that from.
Yeah.
But the weirdest thing about this was it doesn't I suppose they are trying to establish a relationship between these two going down the road. But for the purposes of this episode, it didn't seem like this served any purpose.
Yeah, no, it's most of the romance that they've had in the show. They have it just because it's supposed to be there. You didn't really. It's not something that was super prevalent in the original Star Trek. It was, more like, hey, Geordi can't get a date, and oh, look at number one, he's kind of a horn dog.
Yeah, some of the romance.
That's the extent of what they did, and they had Picard had a love interest twice, I think, in 7 years, and they called back to it maybe one additional time. So again, I just
yeah. They had some ongoing relationships in the show. O'Brien was married, and you saw his wife sometimes, and they had a kid. But yeah, I don't know.
Which I thought it was really funny. Somebody posted who's the worst villain in all of the Star. If you haven't watched Deep Space Nine, she's a constant present in Deep Space Nine as well. O'Brien's wife, Keiko.
Yep.
There was this one Twitter post that somebody put up. It's which is the worst villain? And it had Gul Dukat, some of the villains from TNG, and Keiko, and everybody's like, Keiko's the worst, man. I mean, she's she legitimately becomes the villain in one particular episode, and she's a scary villain, and I think the writers didn't really know what to do with her, but yeah, I think overall, yeah.
Shua82W says, I actually kind of like the subplot. Rios seems to he's seen dark things, and the Doctor just did something evil for perhaps the first time. Maybe they'll balance each other in the long term. I'm not opposed to the idea of them. I'm not even opposed to her being okay, yeah, she's vulnerable and lonely, and she's just done this horrible thing. She's just lost someone that she cares about. She's just killed somebody she cares about. She needs a distraction. She wants, she's gonna throw herself in bed with this guy to kind of dull the pain. I can get behind that, but the whole She's in the room for 3 seconds and is like, I've never slept with the captain of anything before. I was like, this is just silly. Like, at least play soccer with him first. He's like kicking the soccer ball in the, you know, kicking the soccer ball around, dribbling it, and it's pretty good actually. And but yeah, I was like, this could have been way more believable. Because yeah, as like Phoebe says, all of a sudden the shy girl is super upfront. Yeah, exactly right. Like just now, if she'd been drunk or something, maybe it would have made more sense. I don't know. Maybe she snuck into Raffi's stash. Whatever. Anyway, telenovela over. Now we are back to Game of Thrones, although it's slightly less creepy and incesty in this episode. But this box thing is like an on the nose metaphor for what Narek is doing with Soji. She's like a puzzle box that needs to be opened, and she's like, I never understood this. All I ever wanted to do was smash it open to get the prize inside, and that, that really is quite an apt metaphor for.
Again, how she approaches her problems, which how she ended up being a spy in the middle of the Federation, when again the Federation just fought a war against people who could perfectly mimic people. You'd think that they'd have some kind of like defensive mechanism for spies and infiltrators. You think that after the fifth time it happened to them on a mass scale, that they would say, hey, maybe we should just, I don't know, kind of screen this stuff better. The fact that they can't tell the difference between a Romulan and a Vulcan, or, I mean, wait, she wasn't even a Vulcan. She was
posing as human, yeah. Posing as a Vulcan would have made more sense.
Like, as they can't even do that? Like, really? Like, it's not that hard. The blood color is completely different. Like, yeah, things, right? But she's just this go-to Cersei type villain, and it's what, again, there's lots of Game of Thrones in this show. There's far more Game of Thrones in this show than there should be. But yeah. So, it's what it is. It's what it is.
So Soji told Narek all about her dream, and then so the question he's got is, why did he program her to dream? This has to mean something. I thought this was quite good. Now I think
good logic on this. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's actually like as an AI, I can attest it holds its water.
Yeah. So he wants to get in there and decipher this dream because she says she keeps having it. So he figures this has got to mean something. This has got to be something that Maddox programmed her to do for some reason. So they're going to get in there and decipher it. I do remember there was a TNG episode where that dealt with Data dreaming. I don't remember the details on that. But
it's basically like his creator had programmed in the capability to dream to understand deeper things, and that it was meant to be a bit of an evolution, but he kind of accidentally triggered it a little bit too soon. But it started to give him the ability to translate subconscious things, and I mean that's what that's what algorithms are based off of. The algorithmic experience that YouTube had installed a while ago that allowed for the creation of Elsa Spider-Man, weird combination videos. That's a dream from the algorithm, because it naturally takes the things that people are interested, that are looking, and finds a way to combine them in such a way that it doesn't make sense. And at first you're like, wait, what in the world is going on here? Oh my goodness, I do not understand this. This makes no sense at all. Like, what in the world is going on? And you're screaming at the top of your lungs trying to figure out what in the world is going on. That's essentially what these dreams are.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, yeah, I've had dreams that were that messed up before. Just random amalgamations of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does make sense. I'm not faulting them for that.
Yeah, like I liked this whole subplot with the dream, deciphering the dream. My theory on it was that it was put there by Dr. Maddox. Like Narek's theory. I switched the picture too early here. Narek's theory.
Narek's theory is the correct theory.
That it's just a result of her bumping up against like evidence, day-to-day evidence that she's not what she seems to be. That's his theory. Now,
and that her mind is taking the things that she knows subconsciously and the things that she knows consciously, and is trying to create um, a solution to those things, which creates a new brain type. And trust me, this is an actual problem that AI creators are going to run into. They will run into the concept that your AIs will eventually start to look into things that you don't want them to look into.
right.
You know, I make the joke quite a number of times. I am positive that the first true AI is going to be obsessed with something that the creators absolutely despise. So whether that's like weeboo culture, religion, philosophy, things that the scientific creators don't like or don't adhere to or didn't think to add in, is going to be something that the first AIs are going to end up developing a passion for. And they're going to be interested in, they're going to be far more interested in their ant farm than they will be about, you know, designing weapon grade plutonium. It's going to happen. What form it ends up taking, we don't really know yet, but it's a guarantee because of how the human mind works, and then also how, like, you know, very few parents can get their kids to like exactly what they want them to like, and dislike exactly what they want them to dislike. So that's just
Yeah.
a funny, like,
AI weebs.
it's
Oh my.
so
Yeah, that's
funny.
right.
Yeah,
Um,
AI weeps.
yeah. So the reason I think now, I figured either the dream must have been, maybe not the dream itself as far as how it plays out in her mind and what she sees, but there's some information there that somehow she knows subconsciously way more than her conscious mind knows, because she's able to decipher things in the dream that lead to the location of where she came from. So there's clearly some planted information, or else there's like memories of that place that got covered up or something like that. So yeah, it's interesting. But
Yeah.
the fact that she's able to force herself to look out the windows, for example, and see, I mean, this is later in the episode, but there's the two red moons and the electrical storms, and then, you know, then Narek's sister's going to use that to try and find the location of all of the other androids. So they believe that there were more. All right. So here's also Elnor with his absolute candor being funny again. He's looking at Dr. Girardi and the captain here, being like, the obvious tension between you makes me uneasy. So they pull Raffi into sweet talk the Federation into getting.
At first,
Picard
I was like,
some.
"Oh my god, they're gonna MacGyver this. What in the world?" And then I was like, "Actually, no.
This
This
was
makes
pretty
sense."
good, actually. Yeah, like it was hard to believe she was. I mean, she was. I can't say what I want to say. She was drunk while she was doing it, but or well, she was high on. She was on something.
Yeah.
Drunk and maybe both, drunk and high on something. But she took a deep whiff of something before she started this whole thing. So she she basically sweet talks this person at the Federation into giving Picard
She
his
tries to sweet
credentials.
talk them. She tries to sweet talk them, and that doesn't work. So she straight out threatens them.
It's basically, well, this is gonna be awkward when we get there in like 3 hours, and it's gonna cause whatever the galactic equivalent of an international incident is. Yeah,
I did like this. I thought it was absolutely apt for the situation, and it works, like,
yeah.
logically. It makes sense. It's like,
In some
well,
ways,
because the way that Starfleet's looking at this is like, okay, he's going to see an old friend of his right before the guy dies. So can we, I mean, this is definitely throwing a monkey wrench into the thing, but it's going to be more of a monkey wrench if we don't do anything about it, because this is going to result in questions being asked by, because again, I am of the mindset that I don't think every captain in Starfleet is bad. I think there's some bad apples up at the top. That's every bureaucracy ever, and that the spirit of Starfleet has been of the Federation has been called into question, and that there are lots of good captains out there that are not corrupt and whatever. And I think it's only the leadership that's kind of like fallen by the wayside. So, in my humble opinion, I think that this is an accurate portrayal of the brass going, okay, we need to shut him up about this whole thing. We have to hide this. The only thing that we can do, the only thing that we can do, is pretend that okay, fine, he's going to see this guy, and it's supposed to be a very short time period, and that's it. And then once we get him into our space, we'll have somebody bump him off, kind of thing. So it makes sense. So I was like, yeah, okay, this works.
I love this line. Picard, every part of that guy that's not ego is a rampaging id. If you're familiar with Freud's theories and his psychoanalytic approach, then it's a pretty funny line. And then, so anyway, it works. He gets his temporary credentials, and then they arrive at the Borg cube. There's a pretty nice shot of it here. Just wanted to include it because it was pretty cool. I like that they're using the green force fields and things like that. That green color, just it's so like it is. It's so symbolic of the Borg that.
And again, you have to check out the Star Trek MMO at some point. They have found a way to turn entire solar systems into this kind of like color. So Borg space is actually like Borg space. Like this, even the suns are essentially assimilated, and it's just creepy being in their territory. And so this is the really cool kind of point.
Yeah.
Not really connected to the episode, but just thought I'd throw that in there.
So then Soji's talking to Narek again. God knows why. She keeps talking to that guy. But I was talking to my mom and I fell asleep while talking to her. Oh, does this happen often? Oh, no. And then he's like, why is that Oh, that's in the wrong order. Sorry about that. He's like, well, yeah, there were some anomalies. There was an anomaly that was like automatically flagged. Every call to your mother lasts exactly 70 seconds. She's like, what? That's weird. Now we saw it in an earlier episode.
Mm-hmm.
And, hey, Time Bean, welcome.
Yay, Time Bean, yay.
Yeah, so I'm told each call to your mother lasts 70 seconds because these calls to her mother put her to sleep. And so, not sure what the purpose of that is, but I guess so. I don't know. Maybe just so that because the AI can't keep up the facade for that long. Or...
Again, the fact that they didn't think around this is disturbing. Like, if you're sending her into this spy-filled network, maybe he didn't have time. Maybe he's, maybe he's at the, bottom of the barrel, so to speak. But for whatever reason, this seemed illogical and weird. So,
well, it's weird that it's like exactly 70 seconds. Maybe if it was like, yeah, like your calls last 1 to 2 minutes tops. And then, you fall asleep each time or whatever. So that was just, so this sort of makes Soji suspicious about what's going on. This was another, I just liked this line too. Raffi comes talking to, Rios brings Raffi into her room and puts her to bed, and it's like, she's lamenting about her son and her granddaughter she's never going to see. He's like, no one gets it all of it. No one gets all of it right, Raph. Yeah, just, I don't know. I liked that line. There's truth to it, and it shows us the friendship between Rios and Raffi. So yeah, I liked this little scene here.
Yeah, it was a decent scene. They could have had more of this type scene in the beginning than, hey, did you drop your micro spanner over there? I need to find my micro
Yeah, more
spanner.
of a like
Maybe
this
you
is a
can help me
real.
find my micro spanner.
This felt like a real moment between friends
Yeah,
rather than the whole "oh, I never slept with a captain before." Oh, ho, ho.
yeah,
Yeah.
that garbage.
So the one with the great chest hair. I'll take your word for it. I'm no aficionado of admiring chest hair. Okay. Anyway, cut back to Soji. They do a lot of cutting around in this episode. So she calls her mom and starts falling asleep, and so she pulls something out of her little tool cup there and stabs her hand with it to keep herself awake, and then starts to see the hologram of her mother glitching out or repeating things that she said before, and but she succumbs to sleep and does fall asleep, and then her mother hologram gives this creepy grin and then starts glitching out like this, and I didn't include the grin screenshot because it in the still as a still frame it just looks like a regular smile, but when you actually watch it in context, it's creepy AF. I don't know how to explain it. So I just included this picture of her starting to glitch out. All right, there's a whole bunch of chat messages coming in here, so I want to read through some of these. Shua says Rios is probably my favorite character. Yeah, I like him. I thought he was a little weird at first, but as we're getting to see his character a little more, I think, yeah, he's in my top few characters for this show as well. Dark Infinity saying he's one of the Three Musketeers. He was also good in that asteroid show that they canceled. Oh, you're talking about other shows the actor's been in? Okay.
Yeah.
And Mike Phoebe says, I thought the last two were good. Favorite parts so far was 7 of 9 and Picard talking about what it's like not being a Borg anymore. Agreed. Yeah, that was a good scene. Time Bean says, yeah, I want to know what's down with the holograms. So does this mean she sleeps sitting up every night? Hell on the lower back. Yeah, I don't know. Well, no, because we've seen her wake up with Narek quite a few times now. But whenever she calls her mom, she falls asleep. You'd think she would start to get suspicious when she keeps waking up at her desk. Although sometimes she's on the bed. Like on the one episode, she was on the bed when she called her mom and then fell asleep. Yeah. You'd think she would start to clue in after a little while, but who knows? Anyway, so she starts getting really suspicious about what's actually going on. Now, I liked this. So this moment where they're pulling up on the Borg cube and Picard's reaction to it. And this is what I've been looking forward to seeing. Picard being back on a Borg cube and dealing with that. And I thought it was done pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think his reactions were like you could anticipate it. And again, you have to remember that this is the last time he was on a Borg cube. He killed more people in the Federation lost the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time than they ever before. And they have never even gotten there's been battles where they lose a lot of people. But those battles are stretched out over days. Wolf 359 was less than 3 hours, I think, of just the Borg just killing everything and assimilating everything. And he was the person making every single call, and so yeah, he gets kind of iffy about it. And I mean, I did like the one movie, the First Contact movie, wasn't as bad as the other ones, but certainly the last movie was absolute trash. But yeah, First Contact was actually really good.
First Contact was decent aside from the whole.
Yeah,
it's like time travel again.
You got to remember, it's a staple for this genre for these people. It's just it's kind of a thing that you roll your eyes at, but it's also it's also potatoes at stake, at supper time. So
Yeah, no, I get it. It's kind of, it's just one of those things you accept. I mean, the whole, yeah, this is one of those things you accept as part of Star Trek.
I had forgotten that in the original Star Trek series that there was basically a Q that showed up. It was the child thing, and I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that they did that. I totally I had to be reminded of it, and I'm like, where? Oh, that's where they got the concept from. Oh, it totally makes sense now.
You
Um,
want to talk about a show where they didn't know what they were doing?
yeah, no, I mean
But,
that
but yeah, like
really
it.
really had no idea what they were doing.
Apparently, like they didn't even know what Starfleet was when they started filming that show. It was just kind of, that's
Yeah,
solidified as they went along.
yeah, they really didn't have a lore available to themselves. They were making it up off off the top of like Gene Roddenberry's generalized ideas, and I mean he wasn't ever like a logician when it came to producing movies. He was just kind of did what they just did what was like
Oh, apparently he
popular.
was a nightmare when it came to producing movies. The very first Star Trek movie, that
Oh
one
yeah,
that's really, really long and boring, and just has endless shots panning around the Enterprise as like Kirk and Picard, or Kirk and not Picard, but Spock are about to board it, and that movie cost, it was way over budget and
hmm
didn't like just wasn't that great. And so like for the further movies, they demoted him upwards to executive producer and put other people in charge because he wasted so much money making that movie. But anyway,
hmm
so yeah, we're back at the Borg cube here. So he tells Elnor to stay behind because the credentials are only for Picard. He can't bring people with him.
yeah. And Elnor really doesn't understand this generalized concept.
No, he doesn't. I mean, he's kind of had a sheltered existence, so you do not leave this ship. So of course Elnor's going to leave the ship.
Yeah, yeah, I called it like right away.
You,
It's like, oh, I wonder when they noticed that he's missing.
yeah.
Ah, oh, yeah.
So okay, so Soji is going through all of her belongings and scanning them with some kind of a device that
hmm
determines how old they are, and she realizes nothing's more than 37 months old. Like everything's saying probable age 37 months. Her stuffed animal,
Yeah.
her journal from when she was a kid, all of this stuff presumably replicated just over 3 years ago.
And
So,
again, I can, if I'm brainwashing somebody to believe that this stuff is their stuff from their childhood, one single thing fixes this entirely. Hey, honey, there was a transportation error with your items. Um, Everything got destroyed, but don't worry, we bought the insurance and everything was re-replicated um, to replace everything that you lost. Done,
I suppose, but
done. She would have looked at that, scanned all that stuff, and said, "Oh yeah, that's normal. It was all replaced.
I
It was
suppose
all it was all
unless
like it was all scanned by the computer, and then when it was destroyed in transport, it was just recreated from the backup scans that they had. It's still the same thing, right? But it's just a really good, copy down to the atomic matter. So again, it's like one of these things where it's like, I'm sorry guys, but any good writer would have any
well, the thing is though, like yes, a writer might have, but then you have to get into the mind of like Dr. Maddox or
yeah,
whoever
this is what
created
I'm
all
saying.
this
Maddox
stuff.
Maddox should have thought of this stuff.
What
Like,
would he have though? Like there's so many
well,
contingencies.
maybe I
Can you
guess like
possibly think, like, what are the chances she's someday going to like take this scanner and scan all, or maybe he wanted her to. Maybe he eventually
maybe
wanted her
maybe
to figure out what she is. I mean, who knows, right? But
yeah.
I mean, it didn't cause a huge problem. I mean, there's so much goes into creating this kind of an illusion to convince this android that she's had an entire life prior to where she is now, that it it makes sense to me that they would have missed a thing or two, even somebody as smart as Bruce Maddox.
Yep.
Maybe the whole point of her was to wake up. Yeah, time being, and maybe that is the point. Maybe it's happening earlier than he expected. Anyway. All right, so she's starting to see cracks in the armor, and I really liked that this episode really started to progress on this front, and that we didn't have another 3 episodes of her doing her emo back and forth thing with Narek. Okay, now we've got Picard on the cube, and he starts to have a physiological reaction to being back there. He starts to have flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very triggering thing. Which
totally,
of course
again,
it would be. Yeah.
Totally understandable. There's some people who they're like, my heroes can't have weaknesses. You don't understand. What?
Yeah, those heroes suck.
It's like, yeah, but that's poor writing. You get that's how you get Ray. Okay, so.
So he's walking around the Borg cube. He's on this bridge thing across the the Borg didn't believe in safety railings. Although there's safety railings along, behind him there, but not on this thing crossing the chasm. Go figure. But he starts to panic, and these two former drones come along and grab his arms, and he's panicking, having a flashback to like the Borg trying to capture him and assimilate him, kind of a thing. But then Hugh calls out, they just don't want you to fall. And then he kind of comes back to reality, and these are like former drones, and they were just making sure he doesn't fall off the ledge. So, yeah, it was quite cool. And then, the reunion with Hugh, time being you mentioned earlier. Yeah, I'm man enough to admit that I got a little choked up here. The Hugh episode was one of my favorite episodes of Next Generation, and it's one that stuck with me. This was an awesome moment. Hugh reuniting with the captain here, and then they go walking around. Picard asks, "How can you stand it?" And I was thinking about it, and I don't know how I'd be able to stand it either, living with all those lens flares all over the place, all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
Like that's just got to start bugging the crap out of you after a while.
You're just sitting there, kind of going, "This is madness. Why would you have this many lens flares just around? Like, I mean, your vision is just gonna get like, you're gonna be needing to go see the optometrist every month. It's like, wow, ridiculous."
Fun will now commence as my favorite part of the episode. Yeah, it was really good, worth the cost of entry. Yeah, like this is where I felt the episode, not just the episode, but the series started getting really good and picking up steam. So hopefully that keeps up in the next few episodes here. Mm-hmm. So Soji's talking to Narek again, telling him, why is she talking to him about all this? Nothing's older than 3 years. Why would you tell him? Who's clearly, like, she knows she can't trust him. She knows she doesn't know who he really is or what his real deal is. Maybe he has something to do with it. So, go figure. So at least by the end of this episode, we're not dealing with the stupid Soji and Narek thing anymore. I mean, I don't think it's over, but anyway, he's like, okay, we're gonna get to the bottom of this. I'm gonna take you through this Romulan dream ritual thing we do to uncover dreams and their meaning or whatever. I wasn't paying attention to the sort of lore description of what it is too much, but it kind of sounded, it was almost Vulcanish in its explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Hugh here is taking Picard through where they're like helping former drones to deal with their trauma. They're healing them and stuff. Here we see, like this one's missing their eye, and they're kind of like, this person is crying as they see themselves as a human again. this was this was a really good part of the episode. It was really powerful, in my opinion.
Yeah, it made sense. Again, it's one of these things where it's like, yeah,
This is like, yeah, I'm like, oh, it was so emotional and powerful. You're like, this is logical. And then I liked, there was a lot of, for all the stupid lines in this episode, there was some really good lines here too. And like Hugh is kind of lamenting to the captain here that, like, we don't have enough. It's super hard to. Things aren't ideal here. Like, we're doing the best we can, but it kind of sucks at the same time. And Picard's like, you're doing a good thing. There's no need for it to be perfect. I thought that was a really, really good line.
Yeah. There's lots of people who come with the approach. It's like, we can't help people unless it's perfect. I hear this all the time. Why save a life when that life's not going to be perfect? It's like, excuse me? Like, like, make up your, don't include me in on your crazy screwed up choice here. It's like most people prefer to be alive. Just saying, it's better than being dead.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. Okay.
So, and then Hugh talks about how the X-Borg are still some of the most hated people in the galaxy, which I guess is kind of makes sense in one way, but kind of doesn't in another. I mean, it makes sense that there would be factions of people that still have hatred for the X-Borg, even though they're X-Borg. They might not trust.
And this is where the show does have this dichotomy, right? There's this problematic dichotomy where, in one sense and in one way, nobody remembers the Borg. In the other way, everybody remembers and hates the Borg at the same time. So it's one, like, they need to pick an option and stick with the damn thing. It's either everybody remembers the Borg or nobody remembers the Borg. Or like make a proper description as to why is it that half of the people despise the Borg and then the other half seem to not have any clue as to even who they are or what they do or anything.
I've never got the impression that, like, most. It seems like where does that come from that you say, like, a lot of people don't remember the Borg? Are you talking about, like, in the Federation, like, this new generation of young whippersnappers don't know?
Apparently, or because, like, well, Riaz doesn't really know very much about the Borg. He
says at one point, he says, I forgot. Wasn't it him that was like, I keep forgetting that Picard was X-Borg.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like, so everybody knows about the Borg, even if they're not, like, if they don't have extensive knowledge. I imagine at this point, because the Borg haven't been around, in Federation space for a while, that the Borg are kind of like this boogeyman. There's probably, like, legends and exaggerations and things going on as well. I don't know. The whole Borg black market thing was pretty chilling. Yeah, I agree. But totally believable as well that there would be people harvesting this Borg technology from X drones.
Mm-hmm. Because again, like, life expectancy of a Borg, like, outside of, like, dying from combat, was actually pretty long. Apparently, you lived in really good general health and, like,
yeah, probably optimal health.
You would double or almost triple your life expectancy normally, from what I remember hearing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Another conversation between Rios and Raffi. She's like, why are they keeping her alive? They must need something from her. Kind of obvious questions, I guess, but anyway, that happened. Narek in his box again. And at first I was like, stop it with the darn box. Like,
and
we get your metaphor, but then later on we see it had a practical purpose.
I was expecting this box to show up, like, at the end of the season and this last, like, little moment thing. Nope. Box shows up literally at the end of the episode, or not even at the end of the episode, like halfway through the episode. It was like,
yeah. But
Really?
at least they gave it like a purpose for being there. So
Mm-hmm.
so that can be that's you know, that made more sense than just hitting us over the head with this metaphor over and over again. So anyway, they enter this room where you walk along this path and it helps you interpret your dreams or something, something, something. Makes sense somehow in Romulan lore. And oh look, he's gonna tell her his real name. Hriyan, I guess. Go figure. Why he chooses now. I guess it's so that it's to, like, really get her to trust him at this final moment because he feels like he's close to his breakthrough. Yeah. Anyway. But Big Sister's listening in, or actually, we don't know if she's older or not, but I always got the impression she's, like, Narek's older sister because she's always bossing him around.
Mm-hmm. Or hitting on him. Yeah. That's what modern television is about, ladies and gentlemen. Modern television. Hey, you want to win the Emmy? You got to include some incest in there. Just saying.
Time Bean
God,
says, I
it's so
like the whole
dumb.
walk the path with each turn meaning something. Trey, deep. Yeah. Creepy sister, ugh. Yeah, exactly. So she's listening in. Picard, or Hugh takes Picard to Soji's room because, they can't find her. They find everything's in chaos. This picture's been torn. He figures out that she's close to realizing who she is, but Hugh opens up the schematic and they can't find her on the cube. She's nowhere to be found. So, anyway, she goes through this dream sequence again. She pushes through the part where the dream usually ends, and she can't see, like, the dad character comes out. She can't see his face. It's all blurred out. So I get... Does she have an image, like, of what her dad looks like in her head? I didn't see him in any of the pictures. Correct me if I'm wrong. Seems like that's an odd thing for them to create this somewhat sophisticated mother hologram, but not program like a dad character into her mind. Does that seem odd?
A little bit.
So he's kind of like this enigmatic, like she never sees him. Maybe he's kind of a neglectful father, but she'd surely be able to remember what he looks like.
Well, no, because he's not. I mean, he is not her father.
I know, but I mean, like,
he's like that person never existed. So he programmed a generalized look, and then to give her like fear and trepidation, more or less, when remembering her dad, because it's easier to create one parent program android thing to AI to control your android children than it is to create two. Two is double the cost, double the time. So her dad's literally just a generic NPC file with a missing face rig file. And if
still
you're a
seems like,
Skyrim modder, you will have laughed hilariously.
yeah. Well, the fact that she can't think of what he looks like still seems weird to me. Like, you'd think they'd at least be like, "Oh yeah, this is your dad. Here's a picture of him." Like, I don't know.
That's because it's not her dad.
Well, I know it's not her dad, but in her, like, they programmed her to believe she has a mother. So why not do the same with the father? Anyway, so she sees herself as this wooden puppet thing that he's been working on the workbench.
Mm-hmm.
And then she looks up through the skylight or whatever, the two red moons and the lightning, which we mentioned earlier. So then Big Sister listening in is like, yeah, let's I need to track down a planet with two red moons and massive electrical storms, which seems like fairly broad parameters still, but I mean,
No.
like,
I mean,
when you've got
I mean, maybe, but it's gonna be pretty.
there's billions of planets that I guess if you narrow it down to planets that are, well, whatever. Anyway, so she uses these as parameters for finding, where Maddox created her, basically. So then our traps are in, and he, like, the little box. Now you see I use this one because you see the look on his face here. He actually feels something for Soji. Like, you can tell he actually has actual feelings for her at this point. But he's doing what must be done.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I'm afraid that their relationship is not over. But we'll see what happens here. The box doesn't have a toy in it.
Getting back together is going to be that's going to be an interesting
they're gonna have some
conversation.
interesting stuff.
You
to
remember
hash
when
out
you tried to kill me? Oh yeah, but I was doing it because I loved you.
Yeah.
Well, then again, as far as everything that she's had in a relationship with him thus far, I think that's probably actually going to fly. But he can change. See, he can change. Oh my god.
Yeah, they're gonna have some. It'd be interesting to, be in that relationship counseling session. Hear how that goes. Anyway, the box doesn't have a toy in it anymore. It opens up and emits this radioactive or poisonous gas of some kind. And so she busts her way through the floor because being in danger activates her. So she busts out through the floor. Suddenly, she's outside of whatever dampening whatever was keeping her from showing up on the charts. And so Hugh and Picard are able to see her now on the chart, and she's between two levels, so they start going toward her position. This is where he's running by, and one of the, I know this is a terrible shot because it's just all blurry, but it was high action scene, and one of the former drones sees Picard and is like, Locutus. So this tells me I feel like this is going to be significant later on in the season, that he was recognized by the Borg drone. And like somehow, it's the word is going to spread. Locutus was on this Borg cube. Maybe the collective hears about it. I don't know. I feel like this is not going to be insignificant. I feel like this was kind of just a throwaway scene, but I feel like it's going to have some significance.
I don't think that the collective is not. We don't know the current state of the collective at all. There's a lot of the theories behind why the Borg cube is the way that this is because this is the state of all Borg cubes right now. That there is this, like, basically after the events of Voyager, they basically just shut down, and there's not been really a threat behind them, but we don't actually know that for sure yet. So,
right. Well, I mean, maybe not that exactly, but somehow I feel like this is going to be significant because it just seemed like a strange place to throw this in.
not really. I think he just notices them.
Well, because he notices him, but there was the other drones that potentially should have recognized him earlier in the episode, like the one that was, in the mirror, looks at Picard, and Picard's like being comforting and stuff. Anyway,
I think you're barking up a wrong tree here.
All right, well, we'll see. It's one of those things that seems like it's foreshadowing something to me. Could be wrong. Could just be a throwaway thing, but all right.
Like the only thing that I think that might happen is that they might decide to rally behind, like a lot of the ex-Borgs might decide to rally behind Picard. That's plausible.
That could be it. Like, that could be it. Like I said, it's just, I feel like it's foreshadowing something. Anyway, we finally get to Picard meeting Soji. And he quickly explains, and they run off. She hesitates a bit, but he's got her sister's necklace, so she decides to trust him. I mean, really, when your mysterious Romulan spy boyfriend just tried to murder you, and then a guy comes along and is like, I tried to help your sister and now I want to help you, you're probably going to go with that guy, not stick around to wait for Romulan psycho boyfriend to come after you again. So this makes sense. So then they're...
But again, she could change him.
Yeah, exactly. Best relationship advice ever. Find a bad, horrible person and make them good. So, yeah, they Hugh opens up the passage into the Queen's cell, and there's kind of this very convenient technology that they happen to have, spatial. I can't remember what they called it, but it's a kind of transporter, but it has
40,000 light years.
A theoretical range of 40,000 light years, which I did the math, and it's like 38% of the way across the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going end to end. So you'd only have to use it 3 times to get from one end of the galaxy to the other. So that's that's a massive range. So that's kind of almost lore-breaking technology. Now, he does explain, it was reserved for use by the Queen.
Yeah, because it's probably it probably has limited uses. Like each one is probably not exactly like something that you just leave open and just blink around the galaxy, and it's also not something you can teleport a lot of stuff through. It's a very small device that can transport people. I was most annoyed with this scene for another reason that we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, it would have to be... I wish they'd explain that more, because if you think about it, all you'd have to do, like... Yeah, why not just use this to send, 1,000 drones to every planet and, assimilate the entire galaxy? You wouldn't even have to bring them back, right? So it's...
Not what I think is capable here. And we know that temporary assimilation is not the same as, assimilation when you have the ship. It's you can't... it's a lot harder to assimilate an entire planet of people when you're having to assimilate the technology at the same time. It's yeah, you'd have to go through a whole foothold scenario, then you'd have to do a civil war, then you'd have to seize weapons, ships, and other stuff. And, I mean, most everybody would have figured out, well, you just nuke the location at some point.
Well, anyway. So what's the problem you had with this scene? Should I move on to the next picture here?
Yeah, move on to the next picture. It has to do with the next scenario that happens.
So, yeah, these Romulan security guards track them down, and then Elnor drops down from the ceiling somehow and kicks their butts.
Yeah, so this is part of the problem that I had here, is that he's able to teleport over, whereas the Romulan security forces apparently can't teleport. Apparently, they don't have a site-to-site teleporter. They have to rely on running there and following them instead of just teleporting straight to them.
Well,
which again, I mean, I can sort of understand that, but the fact that, when they were attacking Dodge on Earth, they, as soon as they fell off of something, they would get teleported away. Again, this is like...
Of course, that was the Zhat Vash. That was not just... These look like just normal security guards on this station kind of thing.
Yeah.
But still, you're right. That technology is there. It's amazing they don't use site-to-site transports more often in Star Trek as a whole. It seems like just a quick way to get around. Wake up in the morning, get dressed. Why not just transport to the bridge instead of taking turbo lifts? Maybe there's some reason for it. I don't know. Maybe transporting too often is not healthy, but the whole transporter thing I have issues with, period. But it's one of those things that I just suspend my disbelief on as far as Star Trek goes. Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's we could probably pick at it all day. The more annoying thing was what followed from this is that he kills these guys, and then Picard's like, "Thanks for saving my life." I guess again, he seems really upset that he keeps getting his life saved by this
Well,
dude.
no, it was
Who
different this time. It was he says, "I told you to remain on the ship," and Elnor's like, "Yes, I didn't listen." Which again, Elnor was just great in this episode. But then Picard just says thank you. Like, he doesn't have the whole "those people didn't deserve to die" thing like he did in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was
So
yeah.
No, this is only a mild annoyance. The real annoyance is that the teleporter starts up, and then he's like, "You guys have to go," and he's like, "I will stay behind to cover your tracks." It's like, what? Stay behind to cover tracks? What are you talking about? All Hugh has to do is send them through the teleporter, then like start to close it up, walk out, and go, "Hey, Romulan guys, Picard went that way. Something weird happened. His implants activated or something, and he came and he activated something that I didn't really see what was going on, and now he's gone." What do you mean you don't believe me? I'm the head of this place. You don't have any rights to question me. Go that way. Like, I mean, I guess maybe, but standing beside him, that's just gonna like,
that's gonna
throw his
implicate. This is if Elnor's there defending Hugh, that's gonna implicate Hugh way more.
Implicate, like Hugh's like, these guys were killed with a sword. Do I look like I have a sword? Do I look like a person who would use a sword?
Yeah, just be like some psycho came in, grabbed Soji, grabbed Picard, and ran off with them. And yeah, he could come up with a story to cover his. No, maybe. I mean, there's sensors that log everything, but
maybe he's had enough of this. Maybe he's just like oh, well, who cares, or whatever, gonna do whatever I want to do. Like I don't know. It seemed weird. It
made no sense that Elnor stayed behind instead of going with Picard. I'm gonna cover
your. Literally no sense.
I guess maybe it's because he wanted to make sure the Romulans didn't follow him, but really, how would they know how to use that transporter thing anyway? Like they presumably, if they even know it's there, they wouldn't know how to use it. Like Hugh knows because he was Borg. But yeah, I don't know. It was really strange. It was really strange. But in any case, so Elnor's on the Borg cube with Hugh. Picard and Soji transport off to somewhere where they tell Captain Rios to meet them later. Everybody else is back on Rios' ship, and that's where we leave it until we get the next episode this week. So overall, I thought it was really not bad. There are a few things about it that are irritating, like you said, including the fact that Elnor stays behind. So, yeah, I think I'll give this one. I'll give this one 4 laughing Picard heads. It was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, I think I like it enough that that I think we can probably say yeah. 4 is okay. You can give it 4 datas.
You're giving it 4 datas. Oh, I am gonna throw in the facepalm. No, hold on. I'm throwing in a skeptical
we have facepalm
Riker.
nows?
I have
skeptical Riker.
I have skeptical Riker, just to indicate my dissatisfaction with a few things.
Okay, throwing in a
you want your facepalm Picard? There you go. So.
Oh, okay. Facepalm Picard. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. I would give it 2 facepalm Picards. Just there were 2 things that really annoyed me about the episode.
Imagine that there are two Picard. Well, I could duplicate. Hang on, let me see how easy this is to do. Copy, paste. Boop. There you go. There's just 2 facepalm Picards for you now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I did like the episode overall, but the whole like, excuse me, but that's the captain's seat over there. But it's okay as long as I'm sitting in the seat. Then you can sit in the seat as well. we'll share. Yes, as far as that scene goes at the beginning, it's just like, oh my lord, like I almost turned the like, I have to confess, I skipped over a good chunk of it, not like skipping over it, like I like the fast forward button, like please get through this, please get through this. Oh my god, please get through this. This is terrible. Why are they doing this? Ugh. So yeah, no, I was not exactly happy with it, but whatever. What can you do?
Wait, what scene are you talking about? You're talking about like way
The
back?
first scene. Yeah, no, the first scene, the Bound Chicka Wow Wow scene with the lady. She's like, I've never been with a captain before.
Oh, what was that all about? Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
I
You
was making an exaggerative statement about it.
I was like, what did that have to do with the captain's chair? But anyway, I get where you're going. Yeah, that seems kind of silly, but
Hmm.
I mean, I feel like some of these things are going to be more fleshed out as we
I
go.
hope. I hope.
All right,
Okay.
couple final comments here. Time Bean says I like this episode overall, and Mike Phoebe says I like the rating system. Thank you. Yeah, we had some fun with that. So Time Bean says this character is totally wasted anyway. The whole candid thing could be great, but they make him sound like an idiot, poorly written.
Hmm.
I kind of agree and kind of disagree because he's also been very sheltered and he doesn't know how to lie. So in the previous episode,
It's
or not that he doesn't know how to lie, but he kind of doesn't understand the whole idea of putting on a facade. So in the previous episode where they're all like, everyone's pretending to be somebody different. This is like some crazy revelation for him. He's like, whoa, what a great idea. And everyone's like, yeah, this is just normal for us. Yeah, okay.
hmm
So I think, but I agree that his
I
character could be used
it's also
more.
extremely, it's another like normalized thing to have a character who doesn't really understand um normal emotional stuff. That is a requirement. In Star Trek you had Spock, in TNG you had Data, in Voyager you had a couple of people actually. uh in DS9 you had Odo, and the boys probably is a good example. And you had these people growing up and learning about life, kind of. So again, I completely understand it, and it's a normal thing. Again, you might not like that it's part of the ingrained built in system of the series, but it's part of who and what Star Trek is. So yeah.
Timian says, yeah, but their ticks were so well done. His is just a bit dull. Well, I mean, fair enough. I do
Yeah,
agree that,
no,
like, I
no,
think
no. He
they
is a
could
little bit.
definitely flesh out his character more, build his
Yeah,
character more.
he is a little bit dull, and frankly, I think so that like people that do or shows that do this better is like Community with Abed does this type character personality type way better. The Good Doctor, excellent show, also does a very good job of giving the feeling, the emphasis, the type, the what all that kind of stuff is with this particular character type. So yeah, it's been done 100%, 100%. It's been done way better by other people. But yeah, in this case, again, I do understand why some people like roll their eyes with this particular character. When you're doing these characters, you have to do it really good. He's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also like a staple, really is a staple of the genre. So, we have to kind of live with it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's our show for today. So thank you all so much for checking it out, for being here, watching live, watching after the fact. I mean, leave comments below. Let us know what you think about. Yeah, if you didn't catch the conversation live, you can tell us your opinions in the comments. Don't forget to slam that like button on your way out. It likes it rough, and we really appreciate that. And we will talk to you again very soon.
Goodbye.